Whether you know it or not, there's a lot of buzz right now within certain circles in the pinball hobby about television shows. There are shows being pitched, there's shows being dreamt up, and recently we got to see a sizzle reel for a TV show called Pinballers. A sizzle reel, which we'll get into, is the pitch of a show, the not even the pilot, the before the pilot, the alpha. And it's an interesting story that may or may not be over as of right now. And we're going to go deep into that on Coast to Coast Pinball in episode 177. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is the podcast. It's commentary. I'm a man out of quarters. Thank you for joining us tonight, friendly listener. Interesting episode we have here tonight. If you've been following the Pinside thread about Pinballers, Pinballers was a sizzle reel put together by a producer and paid for by a larger company, Lionsgate, and then shopped around to television outlets in hopes of having a reality show based around the pinball hobby, and specifically the pinball hobby in North Dallas, in the Texas region of the country. And it's an interesting story, and tonight we're going to have both the producer who created the idea, Damien, and then a big chunk of the cast of the video. I would encourage you to go watch the video, Pinballers, which you can find on the thread in Pinside if you have not seen it yet, before you listen to this, so you have some perspective and you can form your own ideas about what you thought of Pinballers, because it's an interesting story how they got there. It's an interesting story on the reaction that everyone has had, including the community, on Pinballers. So we'll just jump right into this interview, and then the second interview of the night will be with Jared Gwines, who is also a main part of the cast on Pinballers, who joined me separately. So first part will be Damien Levesque, Ed, Mark, Craig, and Rusty from the Pinballers cast, and then Jared Gwines will join us after that for his thoughts and commentary on the Pinballers, which I think is very interesting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let's jump right into the cast of Pinballers. All right, I'd like to welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball a whole cast of characters, and first off, I'd like to introduce Damien Levesque, who is the man behind the Pinballers sizzle reel. How are you, Damien?
I'm well, thank you, Nate.
Good to meet you, man. Good to have you on the show. Also on the call, we have Ed, Mark, Craig, and Rusty, who are all cast members on the Pinballers show. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of tell the story of how this sizzle reel came to be, how we got there, what everyone thought of it during, after, and then now the reaction to the pinball community at large. So I thought it would be great to start with Damien and just kind of ask you, why did you choose? Because I've looked up your bio and looked up some of your other work. What brought you to pinball? Why did you think pinball would be a good, concept for a reality type television show?
Well, it kind of fell on my lap. You would have thought that this would have happened a long time ago, considering the fact that my father-in-law, Steve Nordseth, is so deeply connected to pinball. He's got a store in Mesquite, Texas, where he retails pinball machines and game room equipment and that kind of thing.
That's fun, correct?
That's fun, right? Yeah. And he's well known in the pinball community, in I guess in both good and bad ways. But he told me a long time ago. I mean, this Pinballers has been in the works for over 3 years, and he told me a long time ago about this guy down in Austin named Darren Spohn. Darren has Pinball's Arcade, this 10,000 square foot arcade, and initially the idea was to be built around this guy running this arcade, this giant arcade that's on the first floor, and his 3 tech companies are upstairs on the second floor. And I initially thought it was pretty interesting because here's a guy who has been very successful in his professional life, but has just had a love for arcade games. So he decides, hey, I'm going to open up a traditional arcade, which is interesting in and of itself because arcades don't exist anymore because they don't make money.
Sure.
So what was interesting about this was that after 2 years, we met up with him about 2 years into this venture. He turned a profit right shortly after I started talking to him. So the idea for the show is let's chronicle what's happening with this family running this business that, wouldn't make money, by any stretch of the imagination, but somehow this guy did it. So I went to Austin. I shot a sizzle down in Austin with Darren and his family at Pinball's Arcade, and cut it together. And that's the sizzle that I initially took to Lionsgate. And basically, the reception was, "We love the world. We're just not crazy about the characters." So then I went back to my father-in-law. I said, "Hey, do you know anybody in the Dallas area that might be interested in doing a show about pinball?" And that's when I started getting the list of names of people, and I started talking to the people that, are sitting here with me today. It basically just started with, casual conversation with, I was interviewing them with a camera in their face. It was basically a casting interview, but just conversation after conversation on the phone, in person, learning about the pinball community. And I was kind of learning as I went along, learning about the social dynamics, learning about what games are hot, how the transactions go about, the different kinds of people involved in the hobby. There are the hardcore hobbyists, the people who've been doing it for 30, 40 years. They're the people who, buy, sell, and trade them just to make money. There are those that, love to mod their games. There's just so many facets of this hobby, and I just found it so interesting. But what I found most interesting out of all of this was just the interesting people who just are in it from all different walks of life. Even though it's a very niche hobby, there is no niche, personality in it. So that's kind of how the idea was spawned.
That's interesting. I mean, there's been some talk about the show and about the idea and reality television in general. And would you say that that's kind of always the main driving force for any successful show, is that there has to be some sort of, personality, cult of personality to sort of be drawn to make any subject, whether it be motorcycles or, I don't know, just being rich, whatever it is?
There has to be something that's going to make you want to sit down and watch it. And usually that's the personalities of the people who are in front of the camera. I mean, I can think of shows that I've watched that have made it onto TV, and they're just boring because the people are boring. But ultimately, and I think you touched on this in your last episode or your last two episodes, if the people that you're watching aren't interesting and the things that they're doing aren't interesting and fun and energetic and exciting, you're just going to tune out.
Sure. How did you choose who you wanted to have on the show? What were you looking for, and how did you wind up with these great gentlemen that are with us today?
It was a balance of different kinds of personalities, and again, trying to balance out the different roles that they all played in the pinball community. They're all known for different things. They all do different things. They're not all restorers. They're not all modders. They're not all players. They're not all big collectors. Well, actually, they all are big collectors. But there was a good balance of people and personality. That's what it was.
Was your view or your kind of idea in your head to be, sort of reality about the community? Was it to be focused on the transactions and the collecting and the actual games trading hands and being, turned into a business? What was kind of your thoughts to zone in on the pinball world?
Specific to the show?
Yeah.
So we went into this sort of with a broad paintbrush. We wanted to fit into the sizzle, or at least with the sizzle show, as these different aspects of the pinball community. And when we go to a network, say, we've got a show with a highly transactional element, but ultimately it's about these people who collect and obsess over pinball machines for one reason or another. It's a very popular hobby, and they're all very passionate about it. So even though we did the transactional element is pretty strong in the sizzle, that wasn't necessarily the only thing we were like, this is what the show is. And I've heard some people, I've read some of the comments in some of the forums say, well, I can't take away what the show would be. Well, we didn't want to just narrow it down to be very specific because we felt like that would work against us.
When you started filming, did you run into anything that you thought was like a nice surprise, or were there any big roadblocks? What was the actual... And how long, I guess, did it take to get the footage that you ended up putting into the sizzle?
So we shot for 3 days. We shot 2 days of scenes and then 1 day of interviews, and it was interviews and scenes. So 3 full days of shooting. Roadblocks or anything, the only potential roadblock was the weather, but that held up for us. Surprises, I was pleasantly surprised by how much help we got from other people who wanted to, be a part of it. You saw that auction scene there. We had a fairly decent crowd show up. It wasn't as big as I had hoped, but it looks pretty big on camera, so that's really all I care about.
Sure. I guess I want to kind of, get some feedback here from the guys. I'll start with you, Mark. How were you approached to get on the show? I've known you a couple years now, and you've been doing the pinball thing for a long time. How did you get roped into this? And you were obviously being portrayed as the villain, in air quotes.
I don't know if air quotes is really fair.
I was trying to be nice.
I think originally Darren sent me an email wanting me to be a part of his show, and that's how I originally sent Damien a headshot that he asked for. And then past that, I never really heard anything past that. And I don't remember how did I get involved in this part of it? I really don't remember. I guess they were looking for some antagonist type character, and it's honestly, I can turn it off and on. It's not a stretch though.
Well, I can kind of elaborate on that. I remember we each got a questionnaire, and one of the questionnaires was who creates somewhat drama in the DFW Metroplex.
Well, it's me?
Well, no. I'll admit, I said your name on it, so that's what kind of got I think I wasn't the only one, but I think I was even asked a question that came on my application or that I talked to Damien about. Is Damien asked me, he goes, do you have transactions with Mark Ordat? And, I'll admit, me and him have, butted some heads before. And I think that's what he liked was the transactions between the two of us. That I think he looked at that might be some drama between the two of us on the show.
So since the show is effectively built around the DFW community, as far as the pinball stuff goes, I was pretty active when it comes to the buying and selling part of it. I've got a business that buys and sells pinball machines, and a part of that is being aggressive when it comes to buying a unit. I mean, even everybody in pinball knows that on the used market, you buy it when it's available. You don't get to go to the used pinball store when the customer calls you and says, I want XYZ. You either have XYZ or you don't. So I was pretty aggressive with buying pinball machines, and that was probably still met with a lot of resistance in this area. So it's just another aspect of whether people like it or not. It's a realistic aspect of what the pinball hobby is. I mean, it just is.
Ed, you were sort of playing the role of the restorer, the person who's going to go out and find a game at a deal that needs love and attention, do the work, put the sweat equity into the game, and then profit on it. I know you from the Texas Pinball Festival. You're highly respected in the community. Is that real true to life? I mean, I know you've done some of that. The Monster Bash was obviously a big part of it. Talk about that, and was that a stretch at all for you?
Well, the restoration part, I mean, that was real. I actually did restore that Monster Bash that they showed in the video. I was doing it for a friend of mine. I do restore a lot of games. I think a lot of us do. So that was kind of the role that they put me in, because I had built the Medieval Madness, and I had shown Damien some of my other games that I had built. As far as taking it to the auction, the auction was originally painted as it was going to be a charity auction, but the charity part didn't quite make the cut. But the reality of it is, people get upset because I bought that game so low on the sizzle, and then I sold it for so much, or it brought so much at the auction. And kind of my response to it was, well, what would anybody pay for because in the sizzle reel, the game doesn't work. I can't plug it in. It's just in a guy's garage. We negotiate over the price, and I did buy it kind of low for what a Monster Bash is, but the idea of it was fully restored. It was a high-end restoration, and it was brought to this auction. And everybody that's been to an auction, people get into bidding wars, and I've seen Monster Bashes sell, close to that much, especially, a couple of years ago before
the threat of the remake was hanging over everybody.
So a $12,000 Monster Bash is not, for a fully restored, beautiful Monster Bash, is not totally unrealistic. And the idea at the time was it was going to be for a charity auction, but the mention of a charity auction didn't make the sizzle because we've only got 9 minutes to do it in. So
sure,
it is what it is. So, but I think everybody buys games and flips them at some point. Myself, I keep them for a while and then I sell them. And if I make more on them than what I paid for it, I use that money to buy my next new Stern game or whatever game I want next.
I could have been a great addition to the show where I buy a game and then lose money every single time I sell the game.
Well, and that happens sometimes, and I'm sure that would probably, if the show went to reality, that would be a big part of it also, because we do lose money. Not every purchase is going to be a moneymaker.
So, Rusty, you and your wife were part of the show, and you guys were mentioned as tagged and dubbed the socialites, sort of the party people, the community side of pinball. Was your wife on board with this going into it? What was the sort of pitch to you and Shelley to go in to be a part of this show?
Oh yeah, she was definitely on board. The local, I'm getting pushed in. The local community, they asked for people that were interested in being involved in the show to sign up, and we kind of hemmed and hawed, like, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. And then Ed contacted us and said, hey, this would be a really fun thing, we think. So I brought it to her. I said, well, what do you think? And she said, sure. What do we have to lose? What's the worst that could happen? Which is probably the worst way to go into anything.
Have you read the Pinside thread?
I've read the Pinside thread, but that was not available before we signed contracts and were involved in the show. So.
And then the term scavengers was given to Craig. And Craig, who were you a scavenger with? Who was your cohort there?
Ernie. My buddy Ernie.
Ernie, very cool. So you guys got a lot of flack because the scene that you were sort of centered around involved finding not just a kiss machine in a dumpster, but also a Rocky and Bullwinkle just sort of hanging outside said dumpster. Obviously, this was a sizzle reel to try and show what could be done with the show. Was it difficult to sort of play the part of, hey, look, I just found a $4,000 machine hanging out in the dumpster? What was that like, and did you know you were going to be called a scavenger going into that?
I had no idea we were going to be called a scavenger, and I did not like that title once I saw it on there. The original idea that was planned for us for our portion of the sizzle was going to be a scene with me and Ernie doing a restoration of doing a swap out on a taxi playfield on my Maryland taxi, because, I thought that would be something neat to show some restoration. What ended up happening basically is, since Damien already had the restoration footage with Ed in the Monster Bash, he wanted to go with a different direction with us because it would kind of round out the sizzle reel of being different types of footage. So really that was a last minute decision. He's like, hey, what do you think about pulling a kiss out of a dumpster? And I was like, yeah, why not? I think it'd be fun because, a lot of things with reality TV is, unless you're walking around with a GoPro on your head 24/7, it's not that it's fake, but look at it as we're recreating life events that have happened. And, there was a situation here in the Metroplex where some guys did find a pinball in the dumpster and pulled it out of there. So, we just elaborate on that scene and, to make it a kiss pinball even makes it more so exciting. So that's why we did what we did.
Yeah, the original story was actually pretty remarkable and hilarious and scary and amazing at the same time. So, I'll admit, what we portrayed in the sizzle wasn't half as awesome as the original story, but the whole point was that this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, I saw some criticism of this as like completely fake, but I also saw people immediately kind of saying, well, hey, I know the story of this guy. And I myself, actually, just in the past year, was in a tiny little town somewhere. And on the floor in the back of this room was a Jungle Queen sitting in pieces. And I said, hey, what's up with that? And they said to me, do you want it? but I was halfway across the country in a tiny rental car. So as much as I would have loved to have saved it, it was just sitting there. So these things do happen. What was the editing like? How much footage, Damien, did you have to kind of sort through to get this down to, what would it run, 8 to 10 minutes, somewhere in that range?
It was around 8 to 10 minutes, which, by the way, is fairly long for a sizzle. I mean, most of the sizzles that I end up getting involved with are around that length, just because we're trying to cram so much into such a small amount of time. I couldn't tell you the number of hours of footage, at least from the footage that we shot for, like I said, 3 days, and that probably amounted to somewhere around 20 hours of footage. But then on top of that, I got a lot of the B-roll coverage that you see in the sizzle is cell phone video from the guys, and I also got a lot of those great shots at the top that are actually from Ed from Texas Pinball Festival. So very grateful to have that, because that's also another thing that really sells this world. The realism of it is that the original footage shot by the real people. That's you can't fake that stuff.
No. What's your goal when you're putting this together? I mean, obviously you want a TV station to pick this up and order the show, but what is, are you trying to highlight just the people, tell the story? It's an interesting process to me, I guess. How do you pick and choose 8 minutes out of 20 hours?
Well, you start. Well, first of all, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about of not wanting to hone in too much on one specific aspect of the hobby. But I guess you start with your if you have your characters, you have those, you're going to establish all those. But then you always start with sort of your thesis statement, and that's what's at the beginning. And the thesis statement was that pinball is seeing a revival, and I think that's undisputed. Like, pinball has seen a revival in the last 10 years, and it started in people's homes, and people have been collecting pinball machines, and I think the hobby has grown. At least that's what I've gleaned. So that's what we built everything on. How has the hobby grown, and who's involved in it?
What did you guys think when you first saw the sizzle reel? And I guess we'll just go in the order I kind of started with before, just so everyone knows who's talking. Mark, what was your first thoughts when you saw this thing edited together and in full color and HD?
Well, I got to watch it on an iPad, so I didn't get the full experience. But I thought it was what I think it is now. I think it's entertaining. I thought it was put together well. I think my first comment to Damien was that it was good. I mean, and I still think it is. I think it took what the pinball what the pinball community for the most part is. I mean, it's people hanging out, it's buying and selling. It is games stuck in warehouses and hidden. I mean, I have bought, I don't know how many warehouses, anywhere from 20 games to, probably 150 games at one time. Not all pinball machines, video games and pinball machines. That's a part of what this hobby is. Ed restores games. That's a part of what this hobby is. I mean, the thing really, I know that people took away a lot of the buying and selling aspect of it, but really the sizzle is much, much more than that. So I thought it was good.
Ed, what was your take when you first got to see it?
I enjoyed it. Well, I wish there was more of me in it, but there wasn't. No, I thought it was going to have more restoration stuff in it. Like I said, Damien, we shot for many, many hours, and it's surprising to see what makes the sizzle and what doesn't. But like Damien and Mark said, and everyone agrees, I mean, we're trying to sell a show to networks, and so we're trying to find something that's interesting to a broad audience, and not just the pinball community. While we really want the pinball community to enjoy it and be part of it, we've got to reach out to those billions or millions of other people out there that are going to sit down on our couches and watch it every evening. So that was kind of the idea. I didn't really see anything super bad about it. I enjoyed it myself.
Rusty, did you see anything that surprised you when you first got to watch it back?
I was surprised how good it was, to be quite honest. My biggest fear in getting involved with this whole thing was we're going to spend all this time and effort, and we were going to get all this footage, and it was going to be edited in a way to make us all look as stupid as possible. And that's not what happened. yeah, there's slightly more exaggerated versions of ourselves that are on TV, but that's fine. It's not, well, look how, bad these people are and how, messed up they are. So no, these are people, this is their hobby, they're having a good time, and these are not your everyday people, but this is not a normal hobby that everyone has. It's not stamp collecting or whatever else. It's fine. I was worried about the King of Kong where all these people got involved and they thought it was going to be great, and it's an awesome movie, but it's not really showing what actually happens. And this at least kind of attempts to show what actually has happened in this hobby since we've all been involved in it, some version of it at least based on real events at the very least.
And Craig, I'll ask you one better. Not only what did you think of it, but what did you feel like the reaction would be before you heard the reaction? Because I think somebody shared this with me sort of early on, and I had to just shut up and not talk about it. So you had this period of time where nobody had seen it. What did you think the reaction was going to be?
Reaction? I'm not asking the question. You mean reaction to what Pinside would see it, or other people in general?
Not just Pinside, but what about Dallas? What about your local, kind of your community there?
I thought they would like it. I thought they'd be supportive of it, because it's the first time ever a real pinball show on a real television network that's on weekly. There's never been anything like this, and I just looked at it as, a fun event that's actually, bringing our hobby to light, because so many people, they walk into our house, they're like, oh, cool, you've got pinball machines. They don't realize that this is what we do. And it's, even if the show doesn't make it on TV, I'm still collecting pinball machines. I'm still going to continue to do it. This is what we do.
Damien, what would you grade it like when you're done? If you had to give yourself a grade for the project as you put it together and took it out to the world, how did you feel it came out?
Well, I can just say editorially, because I started as an editor and then I started producing. Editorially, it's one of my best sizzles, and I'm not kidding. And I've got a lot of my sizzles on my website. You can see them, and I think it's one of the best ones up there. I wanted to comment on the on how I thought it would be received. All the hatred and vitriol I've read in the different forums. That was all there before this sizzle came out, and none of it was a surprise to me. In fact, I knew about it going into this. Just how angry and passionate people can get as far as their opinions are concerned about in this hobby. So it excites me when people get pissed off about
Sure.
What they think. It's a little scary, actually. Just how angry people get. About this kind of thing. It's like, this is not going to hurt your interest or your interaction with pinball at all. So I don't quite understand why people get so up in arms over it. But I knew about all this going in. The guys had told me story after story after story about their reaction that people have had to other people in pinball for doing different things. So
I guess that a strong reaction is better than no reaction.
Sure.
So what was your process once you had this thing in the can and you were, ready to shop it? I know that you haven't had maybe the taker that you wanted on it yet, but what's that process like, and what was the reaction from people who aren't in the community and aren't attached to it, who are looking at it as an entertainment product?
Hey, Nate, before we get off on that, sorry, Damien, I want to give Damien props because, man, I know that just the footage that I shot and some of the footage that I watched other people shoot, he did a really, really good job of making it, of not taking a goofball and exaggerating that and making him look like a complete idiot. He didn't take an ass and make him bigger ass. Damien had a lot of footage he could have used to take the sizzle a bunch of different ways, and I thought the way he put it together was really cohesive.
Thanks. Thank you. The process of pitching, is that what you're asking me about?
Yeah.
Well, so once the pitches are set for us by the agency, and then we go into each of the networks that will take a pitch, and some of the pitches were, that's generally how it's done. That's not how it's done in every case, but that's basically how it's done. You set a meeting, you go in. You sit down with the person that is in charge of programming for the network, and they're the ones that are typically the green lighters, the ones that say this is yes or no to a show. Sometimes that's done by committee, but you sit in the room. You're sitting with 1 to 5 people, depending on the network. You put in the Blu-ray and you watch it, and then you discuss it. And it's fun to watch people's reactions because these executives who work at these networks have no connection to pinball whatsoever, or at least to the hobby. So watching their reactions to the sizzle and the scenes and the people is fun. Overall, I don't think we heard a single thing bad about the sizzle from anybody. In fact, the first reaction out of everyone's mouth was always, "This is an incredible tape," but it's not for us. It's just finding a show that fits into a network's slate is incredibly difficult because most people are so afraid of deviating from what they're currently doing
and what's already worked before.
But I don't want to go so far as to say, oh well, it's too niche, because there's a show on TV about guys that make custom aquariums. So I don't want to hear about shows being too niche when you've got a show about aquarium builders on TV. You know what I mean?
Great point.
It's just a matter of who wants to do something different and take a chance, and you just never know what that is. It's really like winning the lottery.
Would you do anything different with it?
No, I wouldn't.
So Damien says he wasn't surprised by the pushback on Pinside specifically, because that is, for all intents and purposes, the main way we're seeing people react to a lot of pinball topics. Ed, I saw you post, maybe it's a stretch to say this, but a little bit uncharacteristically for yourself. You really kind of pushed back against people and the criticisms. How tough has that been for you guys to see the sort of, I would say, 80% negative, opinions come across after people saw the sizzle reel? And, what do you think was driving that? And I guess we'll start with Ed there.
I don't know. Well, one thing I've heard over and over again is everybody talks about how great pinball people are and how nice they are. And I believe that's true. I mean, at the Texas Pinball Festival, everyone is awesome. And so I was a little surprised on how much anger I saw on some of the forums, because when I looked at it, I'm looking at the sizzle and I'm trying to, in my head, I'm going, well, what's wrong with this? Because everything that's portrayed in the sizzle is part of the hobby. There are some things we didn't have. We didn't touch on competitive play because I knew there was there's another show in the works for that. So we didn't really touch on that. But that doesn't mean that we may not move to that if the show, actually was purchased by a network. So I was just surprised on how negative some of the people were and some of the name calling. I don't do this for a living. I mean, it's a hobby. So I was just, I don't know. I know there's rotten apples in every hobby, I guess. So I was surprised on how negative some people made it sound like they were going to ruin. We're going to ruin the hobby, and people were going to start flooding Craigslist with $5,000 EM games. And well, no, it's not. The market is self-adjusting, and if anything, if the show went on TV, so what if the Craigslist got flooded with thousands of pinball machines that people had sitting in their garages, and they were all what we considered overpriced. They're not going to sell them, and if they do sell them, God bless America. I mean, if someone wants to pay that, they can pay it. I mean, there's no, there's nothing that says that somebody can't try to sell something that belongs to them. But the reality of it is, there might be some people that have an old pinball machine and they try to sell it for way more than what anybody will pay for it. But that's just it. They won't sell it, and eventually it'll come down to where somebody feels like that's a game for them. Sure. So all of this, all these people saying, "Oh my God, they're going to ruin the hobby," and no, it's not. And I read one comment. Well, the reality show needs to be, needs not have any drama in it. And well, my goodness, you just look at Pinside, and I mean that's part of the hobby. Look how much drama is just on a simple forum where people can't always get along. So I think the sizzle reel for pinballers is pretty true to life in the way the hobby is. I mean, there could be more focus on playing and gatherings, and we wanted to get some shots done at a pinball show, but at the time that we were shooting, there just wasn't any pinball shows to go to, so we used some stock footage from the Texas Pinball Festival to throw in there. That was one of the ideas, that if the show was a go, when the pinball shows rolled around, there'd be a lot more focus on that, and that it would branch out into other areas to really show the hobby for what it is.
Sure. Mark, I mean, you work in part of your attachment to pinball has been, really selling games, buying games. You bring a great collection to the TPF. You posted the video, the reaction, the pushback. Did you see that coming? Did you know people were going to be so defensive, specifically about this? A lot of people were really worried that, oh my gosh, if this goes big, the price of all of the games are going to be so high, I won't be able to buy anything.
Well, I posted it the way I did, which was just a link, no description, I didn't want to push anybody in any direction, just let the thread flow. It is what it is. It is what it was. But I'm not surprised by the reaction, disappointed by the reaction maybe, but as far as people worrying about pinball prices changing, how many times over the years have you seen on the pin side that prices are out of control because of whatever? That mindset is already there, and our show didn't bring that. I mean, it brought it back up again, but it didn't generate that mindset. That mindset is always there.
Sure.
So I to be honest, I don't care. I don't care what people think of, as far as like what people think about the characters that are in their show. I don't care. Everybody's going to have their opinion, and if you were worried, if anybody that was on the show was worried about the reactions, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, then they didn't need to do the show to begin with.
I guess sort of an open question for you guys. Jared Gwines was definitely prominent on the sizzle reel. He's not with us right now, but how did you think that his character came off? And I guess maybe get Craig and Rusty to chime in on this one.
I'll give 2 cents on the characters than everybody else. Would you all like to go first?
No, go ahead.
I mean, I think that all the characters that were on the show were exaggerated, representations of what everybody was. I can be a complete ass. It's not hard for me to do. Rusty and Shelley, they party. It's not hard for them to do. Just everybody did what they did. Maybe it was all amped up for the show just because we have to be intriguing to a network, but I don't think anybody acted out of character. Especially, if anything, Jared was probably toned down. The guy's. I know he's not here. He'll hear this anyway. But the guy is over the top with everything.
It's epic.
Everything is epic.
Yeah.
His plane ride is epic. His drive to work is epic. The fact that he woke up in the morning is in fact epic.
Guys, first, hold on. Damien, what's the future here?
Well, my hope is to bring it to the web as a web series, and I'm in the early stages of making that happen. I still think that there's a future for this because I still think that there is an audience for it, and getting anything made, whether or not you're putting it online or you're putting it on TV, is difficult, but there is a lot of interest in having a web series, and my first target is obviously the immediate pinball community. So the idea for the show has shifted a little bit in that it will still contain what you see in the sizzle, but it will be much more oriented around the restorations and how people restore and mod their games. So that'll be a big component. So I'm trying to make that happen.
Is there anything else you guys would like to sort of say? This is a great opportunity, I think, to, without the, sometimes we get lost, and sometimes the pinside comments, I think, get a little, everything gets amped and taken maybe to the extreme because it's hard to get context in typing. Well, is there anything else you guys would say to, just to the community at large, you took part in it? Any regrets, no regrets? How should it be viewed, etc.?
This is Craig, and I've got my 2 cents on it. I really enjoyed doing it. It was fun. I really hoped that it would turn into a show. I think that was the reason why we signed on for doing this. I've got 2 sides to this in the sense that I was reading when our show was being pitched to the networks, I started reading up on other reality shows, and I read something about American Pickers before it went, once it was on TV, and the whole picking collector community was dogging that show because they felt it wasn't a true representation of picking. And I saw the same thing once we read the Pinside thread. It was almost a rehash, but just a different collector community, and it blows me away to see people on Pinside say, well, I wouldn't watch that trash. And I've really got to say, BS. Let me tell you, if it's a pinball show, you cannot tell me the people on Pinside are not going to watch a television show about pinball, because they're the same guys that are on there going, I saw in the back of All in the Family there was a pinball in the bar. I mean, come on. It's a pinball show about a hobby we're all passionate about. So, I just think they need to tone it down a little and take it for the fun ride that it's supposed to be.
Sure. Guys, I really want to thank you. I think it was fun to sort of talk about this. It's there's a lot of people want to see more pinball. I think that's why you got such a strong reaction, is that everybody is in love with pinball, in love with the game, in love with the hobby, and everyone probably has their own vision. But I think it's a great effort. I think it would be awesome as a web series myself, and I really thank you guys for putting in the time and the energy to do a project like this, and hopefully there's the story continues, I guess. And I'd certainly be glad to chat more about it if something else happens down the road. So I really appreciate you guys.
Can I also just say,
yeah, absolutely.
I just want to thank your audience for watching the sizzle and for giving the feedback that they have in the forums, good and bad. I take it seriously. Nothing offends me, and I'm really taking it into consideration for the web series, what people are saying, and what I can do differently. So thanks for watching, and I really hope that you tell more people about it.
Absolutely, we will continue to do that. Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
All right, welcoming back to Coast to Coast Pinball, Mr. Jared Glines. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good up here in beautiful New England.
Oh, where are you at in New England?
I'm at a little town called Sturbridge.
You're going to Pintastic, aren't you?
I'm here. I'm here at the hotel. It's a little town about 60 miles outside of Boston, and I've never been north of New York City. I have no idea what the world's like up here, and it's
green and beautiful right now.
Oh, it's crazy. Just all the greenery and the trees, and I've had the best lobster I've ever had in my life today, and really interesting experience being up here. I love it.
Oh man, I'm so bummed I can't be there because I'm there all the time for work, and this trip just didn't work out. So yeah, well, awesome. We'll enjoy that show. That's going to be a lot of fun.
These guys have gone all out. I mean, they literally have like carnival rides out in the parking lot. Like talk about your first show. These dudes are swinging for the fences on this deal. Like seriously.
Well, I hope it goes well. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah,
I'm really bummed I can't be there.
I was down there for setup today, and it actually looks really great.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Well, Jared, the reason I have you on, obviously, I think where people listening to the show probably know, is you were one of the key members of the cast for the Pinballers sizzle reel, the project there, and I wanted to get your take on and how you got involved, how it came to be, and then we'll just kind of talk about your reaction through the whole process, because I think it's a really neat project, and anytime this hobby gets such a bright light shined on it, even just for a moment, I think it's cool to talk about it and document it. So take us to where it started. How did you get involved with Damien in this whole project to begin with?
Okay, so I'll tell you probably a lot of stuff that you don't know. Number one, because I love details, and number two, I think the history of things is really neat. So, turns out Damien, the executive producer for the show, his father-in-law is Steve Nordseth of Fun Billiards, who is like the local area distributor of pinball games in North Texas. So that's sort of how Damien sort of recognized that there was any opportunity to do something cool. But his first swing at this was with Darren and the guys down in Austin that have that huge pinball arcade called Pinballs.
Yeah, he told us that they actually filmed a ton of footage and sort of weren't finding the personalities that they were looking for.
So with Lionsgate, they went down that road, and they got all the way to where they had even shot the sizzle. And they showed it to Lionsgate, and Lionsgate said, you know what? No. They said, this isn't going to work. We don't want to show this to any of the networks. We like the idea, and we like this, but we want you to go back and rework it. And so we all of us on the Pinballers cast were actually we were the 2.0 version. We were the second version. So this is not like, his first swing at this. By the time that he got to us and at the end of 2013, I think he was already like 2 years involved, right?
Yeah.
So basically Lionsgate says, we like the pinball deal, but we want you to find a different cast, and we want it to be more eclectic, and we don't want it to be based around just a single family, okay? So the first person that he got a hold of was actually me, and this was back in November of 2013, and all he said then was, hey, I'm putting together a show about pinball. We may be interested in having you on the show. Would you mind if I sent you, a camera in the mail and along with some questions, and I just want you to record yourself answering the questions. And so I did that, and shortly after, I think a couple of other people did that, and none of us really heard anything for a while after that. And then I was in LA for a client down at Long Beach to do the Long Beach Grand Prix down there, where they do a street race. It's really awesome.
Yep.
And I was down there, and I had an extra day, and Damien saw on Facebook that I was down there. He says, hey, are you free for lunch? I want to have lunch with you. I said, yeah. So I went to West Hollywood and had lunch. He's like, well, I'm really excited to tell you that, I've got all the full approval to move forward with the Serious Sizzle, and, and we're about to write up contracts, and we're going to extend you and some other people official contracts to be, signed performers with Lionsgate Television. I'm like, holy crap, so, this is the part that I think a lot of guys on Pinsider are missing, that, for us, we have this is not a lot of people kick the can with sizzle reels. A lot of people have hopes and dreams and ideas, and that's great. None of us were trying to make a sizzle reel. This is Lionsgate Television coming to us, telling us, we're going to do this. We're a successful global company that's going to do this. So it was just a totally different flavor from the get-go, because this was not somebody shooting for a hope and a dream. This is a company with a proven track record telling us that they want us to be a part of this cast.
It's certainly really exciting. I gotta say, nobody leaked anything that I know of. You did a pretty good job keeping this all under wraps. Super
hard. I mean, we all signed, NDAs. But in the pinball industry, NDAs, it's just really hard, and I found out now, through some of the other stuff that I've been getting involved in, that, man, people will put themselves strategically as friends with people just to get the inside edge on information and to hear rumors.
No, I don't believe that.
Oh, darn. Oh, yeah, I don't believe it. Yeah, I mean
I know, man. It's everybody wants to be on the inside. You're right.
Go to any of the Stern Pinball designers' friends Facebook lists on Facebook, and look at all the people they're friends with. And I bet the people are so stoked. And well, whatever. Anyways, point is, don't try to get information out of people. Just let it happen. But anyway, that's a different conversation. So, yes, we kept it under wraps, and dude, the negotiation process for like the contracts took forever. And there's a couple of people that basically walked away from the show because of the contract and how crazy some of the verbiage was.
What was your thoughts on the contract? Did you think it was too much?
It sounded wild, but you know what I said? I said, listen, this is a long shot anyways. The odds are against us that we'll ever even have to enact the contract. And if it comes to pass that we're legitimate reality television stars, I'll have bigger fish to fry and bigger things to worry about than some of the fine print in a contract. I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. How many people have Lionsgate Television call them and say, we want you to be a part of the next big show on TV? So I signed. I talked to my wife about it, and I signed within 24 hours. And I think I had the first contract in on the deal.
What was the pitch of the show originally, and did it change at all by the time you got to actually start filming?
Yeah, I mean, Damien had this vision, and he never laid out the whole vision. And by talking to us and interacting with us and asking us questions, he sort of began to craft it, because what had happened was we we the cast all have our own different angles for being in pinball, and that's real life. Okay, that's not scripted. Mark really is into pinball primarily as a source of extra income, and Ed really is into pinball because he loves collecting and fixing machines. And I am really into pinball because I love sharing it with people, and I love telling people about it, and I love watching people play pinball. I love getting people together to play pinball. And the Nunleys, they love to party and have social events. I mean, all that stuff is true. So those characters, even though what you saw in the sizzle is obviously super exaggerated versions of who we are, it's all based in reality. So Damien sort of asked us all, like, how do you see yourself in pinball? What do you do in pinball? What's the situation that you've been in? So I told him the whole story about how I did this big event when I had only been in the hobby for 12 months, and I did this event called the Ultimate Arcade House Party, and we ended up having like 65 pinball machines show up to this event. And keep in mind, this is someone who's been in the hobby for 12 months, and it caught a lot of guys off guard. This is actually the beginning of me rubbing people the wrong way here in the DFW Metroplex. It caught a lot of people off guard. I got 60-something machines together. I got on Ed Vanderveen's radar really quick. He brought some machines to it. And what they were telling me when I was doing this was like, no one other than TPF, nobody's ever been able to get this many machines together before like this. You have a gift for getting people together. So anyway, so as I'm describing this to Damien, he's like, okay, so you like to bring pinball to people and you like people to enjoy pinball. I said, yeah. He's like, well, if you had a limited budget, what would you do? I'm like, it'd be cool to make like a mobile arcade, like go to parking lots and set up like pinball arcades. So he goes, well, what if we did that on the show? What if you had Jared's Epic Mobile Arcade? I'm like, okay, sure, that'd be great. He's like, well, what do you think would look good in the sizzle? What would look impressive? And I said, well, I have a friend with a $700,000 race toter. It's a giant aircraft carrier of a vehicle that's designed to hold 5 race cars. My friend would let me borrow it for the day. And anyway, so that little shot that you see in the sizzle of me, dancing around like an idiot with the the megaphone and the banner, that was sort of the fictitious depiction based on
your real life event that you did throughout previous.
Yes. That's absolutely true.
When you saw it after it had been edited and had the music and the fast cuts and all the color, what'd you think?
Man, so they shot it like in October of 2014, and then editing took several months, and then finally he's like, okay, I'm going to fly in to Dallas, and we want to do an event on January 1st, 2015. We did it at Craig Hassel's house, and it was a private event. Only the cast was allowed to be there, our cast and our family and friends, and all of us together saw it for the very first time. And it was surreal to see yourself edited in the way that you see people on television, because for our sizzle reel is a little different, because most sizzle reels, they don't spend that much money on it, because again, it's a gamble. All sizzle reels are gambles. But because we shot it in Dallas, which was a part of the strategy, Lionsgate already has paid crews in Dallas for other shows that are currently on network. Okay, so I don't know which show it was specifically, but it was something with Deion Sanders that they had a reality show, and so Damien was able to use his connections at Lionsgate to literally just get the Deion Sanders crew, cameras and all, to come film our sizzle.
Wow.
So a lot of times sizzles are done with on a budget, obviously, because you don't have any money. But our sizzle was done with the exact same quality of cameras and lighting and sound that you would have on the actual show if it was a full-length episode. So I say all that because the polish and the colors and the editing style that you see there in the sizzle was a genuine sample of what the finished show could be like. But seeing ourselves on the screen like that was wild. There was a lot of laughter. There was a lot of gasps. There was a lot of shaking your heads. A lot of people were embarrassed. I thought that he gave me a disproportionate amount of time in the sizzle, the way he edited it. A lot of times in the beginning and the end, I'm narrating it, and then my portion of the character introduction was longer than any of the other ones as well. And I didn't want to put a spotlight on me. It's an ensemble cast. We were all equal cast members in this deal. But of course, they all know that none of us had any say over how it was edited or portrayed. And whenever I saw the shot of him zooming in on me with like the glowing rays of sunlight shooting out of the back of my head in slow motion and all that, man, dude, I got so embarrassed, and I looked down at the ground because yes, that is something to the tune of what I actually believe, but I've never sat there and looked in a camera and actually said that on my own. He literally said, all right, Jared, I want you to say that you're the emissary of fun. I want you to, you are the ambassador of epicness. Okay, say it one more time. 3, 2, 1, go. And we recorded that line, 15 times. And when he was doing it, of course, now I found out after the fact, Damien knew exactly what he was having me do. But he didn't tell me, and I didn't know till I saw it. So, wow. So exactly, so he fed us all lines. There's this line that you hear Shelley read, where she's like, the collector with the biggest, the biggest collection garners the most respect. No one uses the word garner. Garners the most mistake. What are we, sword fighters or something? Garner, like you can hear, if you listen, you can hear the word, the parts that we were reading, and you could tell the parts that were us speaking as ourselves, I think.
If you could step out of it and not be the cast member, and if this had been a different group of collectors and hobbyists, and you saw this pop up on Pinside, what do you think you would have thought on that, watching it just first time dry run without the knowledge you did have when you saw it?
Dude, I got to be honest with you. I would be stoked. And it's because of my personal outlook on the hobby and what things are going, and how I'm involved with marketing and in promotion. It's just, I personally believe that even if the show was not realistic completely, and even if the show is exaggerated, and even if the show didn't show all the greatest parts of the hobby, having any show about pinball machines on national television on a major network would absolutely, in the long run, have positive effects on the pinball hobby. And so whether it was me doing it or someone else doing it or anyone, I would be so stoked that the hobby that I love and I participate in was getting national exposure. That I would be excited. And that's why we signed up.
Has it been tough to watch the negativity that seems to have come out from mainly the Pinside thread where the video was posted to the public? Has that been tough to watch that unfold?
Yes. And I'll be totally, I'll be totally honest with you guys. Yeah, it's hard, and we said this part in the sizzle. You said, Jared cares what people think about him. That's true. I do. I always have since I was a little kid. I'm overly sensitive, and I've worked on this. I'm a man now, but still, when people are saying things about your character and about who you are, that hurts to see. And reading those comments on Pinside on a place that I consider home, on a place that I'm proud to be a part of, and that I've invested years and thousands of posts into, to read these people, basically calling into question my love for the hobby and stuff like that, that hurt. And it hurt even more to see my friends who are less active on Pinside, like Ed and Shelly and Rusty. Those guys, I mean, they barely ever post, and they've done even more for the hobby than I ever have, and they were getting called into question. And I was just like, I'm thinking, how dare you guys? Like, you don't know their contributions, and you don't know what they've done for the hobby here in our region. And it's so misplaced to say that they were hurting the hobby or trying to hurt the hobby or would have potentially hurt the hobby by participating in a 9-minute sizzle reel that the only people who have ever seen it are now the pinball community and about 15 executive, producers in Hollywood. And that's it. No one else has ever seen that, and it hurt me so much to read that stuff, dude. Nate,
I bet, I can imagine, and it's I think that shouldn't go softly to people. I hope people hear that and take that.
Just the truth.
Yeah, I agree. Have the people, obviously you are the social media director at Stern now, for those not paying attention. Manager, sorry, excuse me.
I like to direct the social media, but the
manager. Have the people at Stern seen the video, and have you gotten any feedback? Whatever they thought.
Loved it. Stoked. Jody saw it. Jody got an advanced copy of it, and he was like, "Dude, yes." Jody is the director of marketing, and obviously he saw the potential in there. And back when I filmed it in November, you notice in the sizzle, I'm wearing a Stern shirt. Did you see that?
I did. Yep.
Right. So, of course, at the time, I had no knowledge of what I would be doing in 2015 or anything. But I thought to myself, I said, if any bit of this gets on television, wouldn't it be great to get some exposure for Stern? That's literally what I thought. So I wrote Jody an email. I said, hey, we're going to be producing something that could be seen by a lot of people. I can't really give you any details about it, but I'd really like to wear a Stern shirt. If you don't mind sending me one, I promise I'll put it to good use. And a box showed up a week later, and that Wizard shirt was in there. And I kept my word, and I wore it in the sizzle. And Jody didn't even know what I was asking for till he saw it.
Nice.
So. It's important. At the time, there was no money exchange. There was no agreement. It was just I saw an opportunity to help, in a little way, a manufacturer, and so I just fit that in there, And after the fact, when Jody and those guys saw it, they're like, "Man, this show would be awesome if it was bought."
Are you incredibly disappointed that it hasn't been bought to this point, or are you optimistic that there's a future for the show still?
I'm sort of indifferent. I'm just sort of so busy. That's another thing. Like, none of us need the show. In terms of professionally, nobody on that cast is hurting. Nobody on that cast is kicking the can around. We're all professionals. We all have things going on in our lives and different stuff. And I'm certainly personally very busy with different projects and assignments and stuff that I'm doing and traveling around. So it's not. I guess I'm too busy to have been really affected by it. But I will say this: I was surprised that someone didn't buy it, because back whenever they finished it. Of course, the people at Lionsgate approved, and then there was something called Real Screen, which I guess is for people in the industry. It's like a festival for people who do reality TV, and all the different production companies go there, and purchasers and buyers and everyone are all together in one big place. And Damien was bragging to us. He says, the higher ups at Lionsgate are saying this is the only reality TV show that we're taking to Real Screen here, and in 2015, because it's our ace in the hole. This thing's gonna sell before we even have to pitch it. We're gonna be fighting off offers. That there was that level of optimism that it wasn't a matter of if, it was just a matter of who.
Interesting.
And it was that optimistic, and we sat there and waited with bated breath as we would know. He's like, okay, at 2:00 we're going in to talk to Discovery today. This is a big one, guys. Stay tuned. And he would come back and say, all right, I spent 20 minutes in there. They watched it. There was a lot of laughter. There was a couple of questions. They seemed really enthusiastic about it. They said they'd give us a call back. And then, and that's it. That's all we'd hear. And then 2 weeks later, he'd be like, yeah, we got a call back. They said that it's not something that fits into their current, directive at this time or whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of happened until eventually, he was pitching CMT or like country music television, or just getting really into the odd ends of cable television, until it was exhausted, and we kind of knew that no one was going to buy it. And I was like, well, dang, we were this close. And certainly Lionsgate would have not invested at that level that they did if they didn't think that it was going to go. I mean, everyone really believed in the project, or it would have never got as far as it did. But then Damien said this. He says, you know what, Jared? He goes, this kind of sucks for now, but he goes, I have had shows, and other people have had shows that did not get bought. They were shelved, and as long as 24 months later, a network has called and said, hey, that sizzle that we saw, we want to take that to pilot, or we want to order 4 episodes. We want to move forward with that, because now that fits into what we're looking for.
Wow.
So even though it's, quote, done, it's not really done until because it's anyone can grab it off the shelf at any time, at least for a couple of years. It's totally possible.
Wow. Well, Jared, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your side of the story.
So much, dude.
No, man, it's great. I wanted to get your word because you were a big part of the sizzle reel, and it was sure an interesting thing to watch. It was exciting for me to see anything pinball in that format, and who knows, maybe the door is still open a bit. And
maybe.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for coming on, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. And really, I hope you enjoy your time up in New England.
Thanks. Keep an eye on the Stern Facebook page. Lots of cool stuff coming.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Well, that is episode 177 of Coast to Coast Pinball. I thank you guys for listening. I want to thank everybody for coming on the show tonight. No matter what you thought of the Pinballers sizzle reel, I was excited. I was excited to see something about pinball, in high definition with the broadcast capabilities to the masses. That's exciting for me. I want people to know and see what I see in pinball, what I think makes it so great. And pinballers may not be exactly what I would do with a TV show, but it was somebody's take on it. It was an attempt to highlight something in pinball, and I can guarantee you the people on that cast are all in it with us. With us is the proverbial pinball community at large. That's a group of people who dedicate a lot of their time and energy to pinball, and for that I thank you. And I think it's fantastic that Damien found his way into this little crazy world of pinball and took a shot at it. And who knows, maybe the story is not over, maybe the door is not closed. You never know. Until next time, get out there, play some pinball, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care of yourselves.